numbers for us for album number 3, and then I'll take us into the description, the take,
so
if you will.
So this is Richard and Linda Thompson with "I Want to See the Bright Lights Tonight." It is ranked number 240 in best ever albums in the 1970s, number 22 in 1974. It is number 1,700 of all time. And I had it here a second ago. Oh, it's number 240. I'm sorry, number 485 in Rolling Stone. So it just made their top 500 list. It is also Richard and Linda Thompson's highest ranked album in best ever albums.
All right. Well, I'll let you in on a secret, guys. When I saw this, was like, I don't think I'm going to like this. All right. So I started with this album out of the 6 because I said, all right, well, I'll build to different stuff like that. And I'm pleasantly happy to say I enjoyed this album.
Oh.
And I don't always enjoy... I didn't really enjoy the Fairport Convention album, which if you go back and I guess it was just Richard Thompson in that, not Linda. So
that was episode 3 of Combing the Stacks.
Episode 3, and I think that segment always stands out to me for Matt sort of describing the structure of the songs, like for the type of song that Fairport Convention for, like the Irish trad, I think it was, like what that formatting was. Yeah, did I get that right, Matt?
I'm sure I talked about that. Yeah,
he
I might talk
demonstrated
about
the
it
sound.
today.
It was like something, something, something. You know what I mean? Like
that was the
yeah.
reel versus a jig.
Oh.
Yes.
And it's like rutabaga, rutabaga, rutabaga,
There you
rutabaga.
go.
And I forgot about that. What was the other one? Yeah, it's like something like you say one of those words over and over again, and that's what
So anyway, that stuff didn't really land home for me. I was not a big fan of it. This, though, was more... first of all, the instrumentation, I was fascinated. I was like, what are these sounds that I'm hearing? Like, I can't quite figure out, like, what they were. And what I came to learn was that one of the sounds I kept hearing was something called the hammered dulcimer. And like I didn't even know what the hell a hammered dulcimer was, so I was like, all right, I'll dig into this a little bit. And it's kind of like this like stringed instrument that serves like a percussion sound. You kind of almost like hold it like a harp in your legs, kind of. It's very hard to describe what it was, but it has this very distinct sound that I heard. Then I recognized the mandolin without looking at it. The second thing that I found was the crumb horn, which was the other sound. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that is the crumb horn. This sound. And I was kind of pleasantly surprised that I was able to recognize these sounds because, Matt's usually the best of the three of us, right, at picking out these sounds. And I'm like, okay, these are sounds that don't sound like things that I'm aware of. And that's what these things were. So if you were looking for the crumb horn, it was in apparently 2 different people were playing it in both songs 1 and 6, but there's a distinct sound from the crumb horn.
Yeah, who had crumb horn on the CTS bingo card?
I did not, or in the oblique strategies that it's like So yeah, it's like it was one of these things where like I started like reading about some of these instruments and I couldn't quite figure out like how you would pick to make that the sound, but God bless you. And I think it probably ties into like folk sounds and stuff like that. But I really liked it. I really like Linda Thompson's voice quite a bit too. There was something about it that serves in the same way that like Natalie Merchant does in the 10,000 Maniacs. She doesn't sound like Natalie Merchant, but it kind of grounded the sound. So instead of just going into like full, because I don't know if you heard like 10,000 Maniacs after Natalie Merchant left, but they became kind of like almost like a true folk band with like a woman who's like Irish who sang like very traditional folk that kind of sounded like almost like what Fairport Convention sounded like. And like I always felt like you kind of realize like, okay, Natalie Merchant like grounds this in a different sound, like an ethereal quality almost. I felt like almost Linda Thompson did that a little bit for this album as well. And I like 10,000 Maniacs, so that kind of snuck in. A lot of folk kind of is too cheery for me in some ways, or like dancey. I don't even know how to describe what it is. This was a darker album though. Like not like dark, like, gallows dark or depressive dark, but it's there's the Cavalry Cross, right, and Withered and Died are definitely thematically darker. And then they're talking about things like, sort of a little bit of the gutter, right? Like Down Where the Drunkards Roll and Little Beggar Girl and stuff. There's a world weariness to this album that was nowhere near like the Fairport Convention stuff that I remembered. And so I started trying to divorce myself from thinking of it in that context. And I was very glad I did, because I ended up liking this album quite a bit. I can expand on stuff there, but I don't want to take up too much air. And I'm curious to hear what you guys thought of this album. So I guess it would be Matt, right? Who would go next?
Yeah, I think
Matt?
It's me. Yeah, I like this stuff, man. This is like right up my
alley.
Well,
yeah, this is up your alley, yeah.
Yeah, so I did know Richard and Linda Thompson. I think my brother had one of their records, not this one, but actually one from the 80s that I remember hearing. And that definitely, and I listened to that again after listening to this just to remind myself, and that definitely has more of an 80s production behind it. But this kind of goes back more towards the, reminded me more of the Fairport Convention type stuff. But it's like, it's definitely British folk, and I would say it's like Irish folk too. One of the songs I had, I described as being kind of like, I think it was Withered and Died. It sounded like Celtic country music,
Yeah.
So, and I think a big part of that is Linda Thompson's voice. There is something about her voice that you can definitely tell. It's not an American sounding vocal style that she has there. It's certainly more of a British or Irish one, and I think that the music surrounding it has a variety of instruments. I certainly did not know all the ones that John was referring to, but
I didn't either. In fairness,
but you can definitely tell things like basic things like there's accordion, there's the mandolin certainly is here, but then there's also interesting things like the electric piano. Down Where the Drunkards Roll have this kind of like electric piano type song, and like a kazoo kind of a thing. There's a variety of instrumentation. I'm sure if I looked at all,
wasn't it?
Oh yeah, that was a tin whistle, is what that was. If you want to get specific, yes.
That sounded Well, there you go. So I really like that. I like the variety. I think my favorite song, one of my favorites on here, was the Little Beggar Girl, and Linda Thompson sings almost like with the vocal style that she takes here is almost of like an unrefined or like lower class peasant girl.
Yes.
Like you could tell that, it's almost like a Cockney type accent that she's got. But throwing in the accordion, the mandolin, there's really cool guitar parts in here as well. So there's certainly some, it's not just all folky stuff. There's some rock elements, infused in here as well. This reminds me, and I didn't pick this up on Fairport Convention, but this album reminds me of the Decemberists. This is something that totally the Decemberists, Colin Malloy and all those guys. This is stuff that seems like that they just totally aped from, or like that was a big influence on them. The sound of kind of taking.
But I like this better than the Decemberists.
Yeah, which is why I was going to say. I was like, I know you don't like the Decemberists, but this is to me. There's a lot of similarities here between some of the themes and the sounds.
Literate rock, isn't that what they call themselves? Yes.
I've never seen that, so I am interested to.
Decemberists are like more ornate, and they're more than this album in a lot of ways.
Well, that do. Well, yes, but if
they combine like this sound with that Fairport Convention, like give me a jig and give me a drink and give me like that sound, that like is the stuff that loses me. And that's what I really liked about this album, is it didn't go to that like, and then we all sing the dance, where it gets like, oh my God,
although there was a song here,
long spinning tales that go too long,
But I did think that something like We Sing Hallelujah was like a pub song. Like that's a song I could see a bunch of people like raising their glasses and being all drunk and stuff and like singing all over each other and whatnot. So
yes, that's the one that was like a throwback to that style for sure.
Right.
And not surprisingly, that song I hated the most on this album. So yeah.
Cavalry Cross had like the opening was like an Indian raga droning kind of thing going on. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, and it's just very interesting. I think the musicianship's great. I think her vocals are great. I liked it when I believe it was Richard Thompson would do some sort of harmonizing in a deeper vocal range.
Yeah, I really like that,
which I thought was very cool as well. So cool sounds on here. Didn't know any of these songs, and but
are you talking harmony bass vocals, by the way? Because that's a gentleman by the name of Royston Wood on track 6, and then on track 5, it would be Trevor Lucas singing harmony vocals, not differentiated as bass vocals. So it
Yeah.
could be them as well if you're talking
It could
about
be
those
them, yeah,
specific
because I
songs.
definitely on Down Where the Drunkards Roll, I noted that I like the deep harmony vocals there. I assumed it was Richard Thompson's, but I guess it's some other dudes.
That'd be
but
Trevor Lucas.
Trevor Lucas. Well, I like his vocal styling, so it matches up well here, and so I liked it.
He was in Fairport Convention, by the way.
Okay. All right, crossover there. There's some stuff in here that sounds like the band, There's and which I like a lot. So, yeah, a fan. I like throwing in these different instruments. The sound, I like the Irish, or the British folk type sound. The trad music, as I had mentioned before, for Fairport Convention, big fan of that type of stuff. Don't listen to it a whole lot, but I do when you kind of put it in a more of a modern sound and throw some other, modern, rock and pop elements to it. That's a good formula for me, and I'm going to like that most of the time.
Yeah. The big takeaways I took from this album are, this is them trying to bring British folk into like a more modern context, I think, getting away from all of those traditional type sounds that we hear in Fairport Convention, and all of those songs in Fairport were like older songs for the most part, hundreds of years old. It seems like Richard and Linda are trying to maybe put a little not a modern spin or modern sound onto some older songs. Now, I don't know. I didn't look up to see which of these they wrote or which were, older, folk songs, but it sounds like a modern production to me. Some of these songs sound timeless in a way too, like the Little Beggar Girl. You could almost like play this at any decade and I wouldn't know what it was from based on how it sounded. The other thing I noted was how they kind of switch off singing. Richard does a couple songs and then Linda takes over and does some, and it sounds like they might not. I mean, sometimes they do songs together, but maybe not harmonize together based on what John was saying. But I like when they play together too. I mean, probably when Linda's singing, Richard's playing guitar, I would imagine. But yeah, I like the back and forth between them because I think they both have really good voices, and I liked how, I don't know if this carried all the way through, but on Cavalry Cross the vocals felt like they were in the back a little, and it was more like music it was in the foreground. I heard some almost like mix of British folk and some like American West Coast jangle folk in a way, like When I Get to the Border on the opening track. But yeah, this was a good album. I agree, I was pleasantly surprised. I was thinking it would be more like a Fairport Convention album too, but it definitely sounded different. I wouldn't say, and like John said, it's kind of more serious and not upbeat, and try maybe more real in a sense, trying to get to the darker side of life or shed some light on that. And I'm not sure if traditional British folk focuses on that all the time, or if they do, it's in a more like upbeat tempo sound. So I think the main thing is that their voices are good and the guitar playing is excellent. So if you like that, I mean, check this album out for sure.
Yeah, my guess is Richard Thompson's playing guitar throughout this whole thing. I don't know. Even when he's singing.
He's a session guitarist on a lot of albums we've talked about. He pops up from time to time as a guy playing on a track in some of these albums that we've covered. So, yeah, you know who really loved this album, guys? As I look at something, because I'm digging into this as we're talking, Kurt Loder loved this. He described this album as a timeless masterpiece with not a single track that's less than luminous, guys. So,
wow,
Kurt Loder is
he's a big
all
fan.
over that.
Yes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, any final thoughts?
So are they, I mean, again, this is where there's always questions about when the bio would be helpful, but are they like fully on their own at this time? Are they still, is Fairport Convention still around? I have no idea.
So they're married.
I think Fairport Convention was still around, because I think they were around for a while.
I think
they might
still
even be one of those
around,
bands that are still around, yeah. But I think I think Richard Thompson left. I think he only did a couple albums worth and then went and did his own thing. So yeah, but no, it's solid. It's very good. Great songwriting, great musicianship. different sounds, right? Because this is not this type of music is not stuff that we've heard a lot of. Actually, this is when you're throwing that British folk, that Irish folk, kind of those types of sounds in here. That's not typical of what we've been listening to for the most part. So a little unique, I would say.
It's probably definitely worth a re-listen on my part.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this album was recorded in May 1973 and released almost a year later, April 1974. Richard Thompson left Fairport Convention in January 1971.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that gives you an idea. So there's a good solid 2+ years, when he's gone. But Fairport Convention is still around. And interestingly enough, his first solo album had Sandy Denny, right, who was in Fairport Convention, and a bunch of other people that were from it. So he was still connected to that world.
And the albums that Richard and Linda Thompson have are mostly from the 70s. They have some releases, and they have one release in the 80s, and then they have a couple like live albums and stuff that came out later. So they're mostly stuck to the 70s. Didn't really have much output after that.